are with Monster Hunter Wilds. Here is the review. Uh, I want to say that I plan on having this out a little bit earlier, but if you can't tell, I don't know. I don't know how obvious it is, but when this game came out, I got sick, so that's tragic. However, the game was so good that even though I was sick, I kept playing it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it as fast as I wanted to, but we're still here with the review. Might be a little late. Uh, it might be pretty obvious that the game is amazing, you know. I guess I should also specify that I got the game for free. You know, I'm a Capcom creator. They sent me the game for free. So, yeah, I guess I should specify that, you know, just to make it clear. However, I was already going to buy the game, you know, and I'm a Monster Hunter fan. And yeah, I guess let's just get into it. So for the footage you're going to see here, I would say nothing is past like the 2-ish hour mark. All the footage here is very early game. I don't want to spoil anything, so everything in this footage is very early game footage. And I try to not include any important dialogue or story cutscenes. So this cutscene right here, you know, it really has no relevance to the story. It's a monster intro cutscene. So yeah, I tried to avoid spoilers as much as possible with the gameplay. So with that out of the way, let's get into the review. I'm just going to be mainly yapping over the gameplay here. I feel like everything comes together in this game to the point where you can just see for yourself the quality. I don't feel like I really have to go break the game down into categories. You can see everything just laid out in front of you. Cutscenes, dialogue, graphics, combat. But I will talk about all of them. But yeah, so where do I begin? Well, let's begin with the problems, right? Because there's not many of them. So let's just get the problems out of the way. So, one of the problems comes from something that's actually pretty good, which is the story. The story of the game, I have never cared about Monster Hunter story. If you want me to be honest, I don't really care about the story in this game, but it has nothing to do with the quality of the story itself. It's just that I was never really into Monster Hunter story. But if you are into Monster Hunter story, I feel like it's safe to say, now I haven't played every Monster Hunter game, but I feel like it's safe to say that this game has the best story out of any Monster Hunter. I feel like that's not that controversial to say. The cutscene quality is amazing, as you're seeing right here. The dialogue is even better, and your hunter is an actual character now. Your hunter can actually speak in cutscenes and stuff. Your hunter is an actual character. Your cat can even talk now, which is kind of crazy because, again, I'm not super into the original Monster Hunter games, but, you know, I come from World, and you may be thinking like, oh, this guy's a new player if he comes from World, but you gotta remember that World is 7 years old now, so, you know, I'm about to be 21, so I've been playing Monster Hunter for, what, 1/3 of my entire life, which is 7 years. So that's crazy when you put it in that perspective. So if you want to call me a new player, I guess you can, because I'm really only experienced with World, Iceborne, Rise, Sunbreak, all that. But in those games, your cats do not talk. Your character talks in Rise, but I don't remember him talking in cutscenes. Either way, your character is an actual character now. And I like all of the characters in this game. So, overall, I would say this game's story is the best story in a Monster Hunter game. But that's going to bring us to our first problem, which is they really try to push the story in this game. And they push it in quite possibly the worst way a video game can push a story. See, I am somebody who I can admit that Red Dead Redemption 2's story is amazing. However, the way they tell it is god awful. And it has to do with forcing you into a position and forcing you to listen to stuff. So, one of the reasons why I've never played Red Dead 2 again, I beat it once and I never touched it again, is because the majority of the game is you on a horse, slowly talking to someone else on your way to a destination. And unfortunately, when it comes to the story, Monster Hunter Wilds takes the same approach a lot of the time. One of the things I don't really like about the game is the fact that the game is open world, yet they don't really, you don't explore the open world at all. Every time you unlock a new area, your team or whatever, you know, characters will take you to the area and they will show you around the area. And these segments are locked on rails. You can't really control your character. You're just slowly walking through the new area as they show you around or they take you to the village of that area. You don't get to discover that stuff on your own. You're forced into being taken to the village for that area, and everything is pretty much done for you. Now, I don't see this as a big deal because this only happens in the story. Once you're done the story, you're never locked on rails again, at least so far. I should clarify, I have not beaten endgame. I am a few levels away from unlocking the final monster, but I have not finished endgame, but I've played probably about, you know, like 95% of it when it comes to all of the monsters and stuff. So I've played a decent chunk of endgame. Like I said, I'm right to the end of the unlocking the final monster. So yeah, I would say that there's so many on-rail segments in this game that is just force-feeding you dialogue and showing you around the map. You don't really get to explore the map. Now, obviously, when you're not in these segments, you can walk around freely and do whatever you want, and there's tons of stuff in the map. But as for showing you the main locations of the areas, you're forced on rails to visit those locations by other characters. So, that is the worst part of the game, I would say. The story segments being shoved into your face. Because they do it in the worst way possible, which is, you know, when you're playing a Call of Duty campaign, or any campaign, and your character is forced to walk. You can no longer sprint. You're forced to walk down a slow hallway as characters talk to you. Or, like I said, in Red Dead 2, where you're locked to being on a trail, following someone on a horse for 5 minutes while they slowly talk to you. That is the approach that Monster Hunter Wilds takes to some of its story. As you can see, the game also has cutscenes, which I've been showing a few of them here. So that's all there, you know. It's not all being locked to on-rails conversations, but there is a decent chunk here when it's never been a thing before. Overall, if you're a giant Monster Hunter story fan, you might enjoy some of these parts. But for me, all it did was just slow down the game. However, even though it slowed down the game, I would say that this game's pacing is amazing. And because of the monster selection in this game probably has my favorite Monster Hunter story pacing, I would say, out of any of the ones that I've played. The monster selection in this game is very good. It's very unique. A problem I had with World is that a lot of the monsters felt the same. They were all, you know, like the wyvern type monster for the most part. Obviously there were some exceptions, but World was very safe with their monster picks. Whereas this game has a very unique selection of monsters. And Rise had a good selection of monsters, I feel, but I think this game has the best selection of monsters when it comes to the base game. You know, no updates, nothing, just the raw base game. I think this game's selection wins for sure. Uh, I mean, there's a bunch of monsters in the game, and I should say that the game took me about 8 hours to complete. I didn't do any side quests. I didn't really take... I just full-on speed ran through the story. So, if you're taking your time, it might take closer to 10 hours to beat the story. But, like I said, I'm not a giant story fan. I just really love Monster Hunter as a game. And Monster Hunter as a game doesn't really start until you get to the end game. So, obviously, I was just trying to make it through there. But what I can say is that the monster selection and the pacing at which you fight these monsters throughout the story, you're constantly being given new monsters. I'm really trying to think right now. I don't think they make you fight a single duplicate monster. I remember in Monster Hunter World, I believe, they made you fight the same monster a few times. I'm trying to remember if that's true. I believe you fought repeat monsters in the world. Either way, in this game, you don't fight any repeat monsters. Every time you fight a monster, it's a new monster, and none of them are similar, really. They're all pretty different. So I really like this game's monster selection. I also really like the new wound mechanic. I think it's great. It's a good replacement to Clutch Claw. I love the wound mechanic, and it doesn't feel like... in my opinion, in Monster Hunter Rise, it felt like you couldn't play the game unless you had a wire bug ready to go. In this game, though, you can play the game, you can play Monster Hunter, and when you see a wound, that just gives you a target to go for, you know? It's not like you're over-relying on something like a wire bug or a clutch claw. Even though I really like the wire bug, I think it was fun, I hated having to have resources be locked. Like, oh, well, you can't really do this until your wire bug is charged. It's like, really? I don't like that. So, yeah. Can I just say, this Charge Blade gameplay is really bothering me. I don't know why I'm not, like, holding the attacks. I guess, I don't know what I was doing. This gameplay is bothering me. But, anyways, yeah. I like this game's new wound mechanic. I think it's great. I think it's probably the best mechanic they've had out of Clutch Claw, Wire Bug, and this. I would say this is probably the best idea they've come up with. I guess I can go into another complaint about the game. Now, I've seen some people on Twitter saying that the base game of Monster Hunter World was very easy. Now, that was my first Monster Hunter game, so it was extremely difficult for me. However, this game was brain dead easy. I only failed one mission, and that was because a random ended up joining my game and dying a bunch of times. So other than that, I've never failed any hunts at all. And I feel like the game was very easy. Now, some people were saying on Twitter, like I said, that Monster Hunter World was also very easy. So if that's the case, then I guess it's just not, you know, me not being a noob anymore. I'm more used to the game or whatever. But, yeah, that's something I should mention. The game felt very easy, but like I said, you know, maybe that's just me being better at Monster Hunter than I was when I started. Overall, I wouldn't say the game was boring, though. Like, I wouldn't say it's a boring game or it's an unenjoyable experience. It's far from that. But Monster Hunter World was such a difficult game for me that, like, I remember I wasn't super into Monster Hunter World until Iceborne came out, but I remember how hard Rajang was, how hard Brachydios was, Fatalis, obviously. Like, some of those fights were genuinely, like, monumental moments in my gaming career, just fighting these guys and winning after so many attempts. So far, besides the one time that a random died in my hunt, I've never had to retry a monster. So, game is very easy, I would say. But if you're a new player, I don't know how easy that would be. Yeah, so, I mean, there's not much to say about the combat, right? It's Monster Hunter. You know that the combat is perfect. And with the new moon mechanic, I think it's even more fun. I also like the way the aiming works. The aiming is very good. It was kind of useless, I feel, in most Monster Hunter games, but aiming is useful on every single weapon, I would say. So that's cool. I love the addition to the move list, right? I love the way that dual blades work now with like the whole perfect dodge and the wound attack where you like grapple onto them like an Attack on Titan character. I just think from every weapon I've played charge blade, dual blade, and switch axe. And I like, out of all of these weapons that I've played, I think that the Monster Hunter Wilds version of these weapons is the most fun version I've played out of all these weapons so far. Again, I've only played World and Rise, so I don't have much to go off of here, but I prefer the way the weapons feel and their movesets in this game compared to the other games. So, combat is great. It's really hard to describe Monster Hunter combat if you haven't played it. Just know that if you have played Monster Hunter, I would say this is my favorite combat out of Worlds and Rise. The graphics, I'm glad. I understand that the PC version has some pretty bad problems. You're watching the PS5 version. It's a locked 60 FPS for 95% of the gameplay. Yeah, there were some frame drops sometimes, but game runs great on PS5. It is a little blurry. But I would not say this is an ugly game. I would say this is a very beautiful game. Unfortunately, the PS5's resolution does bring it down a little bit, but this game needs it to run 60 FPS. You have to play on performance mode. It is going to be a little blurry, but you know what? I'll take it over the PC version, because from what I'm hearing about the PC version, it's a disaster over there. So I will gladly take my slightly blurry PS5 version that runs at 60 FPS 95% of the time. More than 95% of the time. I could probably count how many frame drops I've had in this game. So, yeah. Graphics are great. I love the way the game looks. I love the art style. For me, personally, Monster Hunter World was a very dull-looking game, but it was very good-looking. But Monster Hunter Rise was an ugly game, but it wasn't dull. It was very colorful. And I think that this combines Rise and World's art style. This game is nowhere near as dull and bland looking as World was. Don't get me wrong, World was beautiful, but it was very realistic looking. It lacked a lot of color. This game kind of has some of Rise's color in it. Things are a lot more glowy. They're a lot more colorful. It's not as gray. Monster Hunter World was a very green, brown, gray game, It was a very realistic looking game. I wouldn't call it ugly, but it was bland. Rise was an ugly game because it was a Switch game, but it had a really good art style. I really liked the colors of that game. And I think this game combines both of those perfectly. Some people would argue that Monster Hunter World looks better, and that might be due to the resolution problem on the PS5 because you have to play it at a lower resolution. I don't know. I think I prefer the way this game looks. I really like the colors. I like the way things pop. I love the weather effects. The weather effects are insane looking. Yeah, I really like the way this game looks, but I do have to admit that it does get very blurry sometimes because of the PS5 playing on performance mode. For the PC version, if you bump that up to max settings, 4K, it'll probably run terrible, but I would imagine it would fix the blurry problem. But overall, I think the game looks good. There is an argument where you could say that World looks better. I can see that argument, but I prefer the way this game is. It just looks like World, but with, you know, not as bland, more so in the Rise direction of color. So we talk combat, we talk story, we talk gameplay, graphics. I mean, sound is obviously perfect, music is perfect. I don't think Monster Hunter could ever fumble their sound design or their music. I don't think it's possible. The bosses in this game, like the big bosses in this game, are amazing. The final boss is a little disappointing because, spoiler alert, he doesn't have any armor. That leads me to believe that there will be an update where you get to fight, like, maybe the true version of the final boss that will have armor. I don't know. He's kind of a little secretive in what he is, so we don't really know what the boss is. He kind of just abruptly appears, and then you finish the game. It's like, okay. Yeah, but some of like the big boss arena fights they have in this game are amazing. Very high quality. The weather effects, like I said, are amazing. Gameplay is amazing. You know, the story's amazing. Your hunter actually talks. I don't like the on-rail segments. The blurriness of the game is a little weird sometimes. I'm trying to summarize everything, and I feel like that's about it. You know, it's just it's Monster Hunter at its best. I feel. I don't have any complaints. I really don't know where I could say this game goes wrong. For me to get severe complaints about this game, I would probably have to heavily grind and invest into the end game, which I'm only just now starting to do. But I think the game, the biggest complaint would be that as someone who doesn't care about story in Monster Hunter, the game doesn't really become Monster Hunter until you beat the story. Because the game gets a little bit more difficult. You get a lot more freedom. You really get into that Monster Hunter loop after you beat the game. The Monster Hunter loop is really nowhere to be present, nowhere to be found in the story. So maybe it can be misleading for people. They're like, oh, this is the game, and then you beat the game, and then you're like, oh, so this is the game. It's like, okay. Yeah. Overall, I think the game is great. As I predicted before the game came out, I predicted this, you know, when they announced the game, like over a year ago. I thought that this game was going to be Game of the Year, and I still feel that this game is Game of the Year. I do think that GTA 6 could take it, unless they have a disastrous launch, like some Cyberpunk launch. I do think GTA 6 will be Game of the Year. But as of right now, I don't see any other game coming close to Game of the Year besides Monster Hunter Wilds. This is my Game of the Year. And you know what? If GTA 6 is more in the direction of Red Dead 2 was, I think that this game will personally be Game of the Year for me, even over GTA 6. Because I don't like the super slow, realistic approach that Red Dead 2 took. And yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm saying, that this game is that good to the point where I would even consider it. And I'm not a GTA hater. There's a lot of people who are GTA haters. I'm not a GTA hater. I genuinely appreciate those games, especially for when they came out. But I am a Red Dead hater. I hate the overly realistic direction they took. So I am saying, as someone who likes GTA, that I would consider this game to potentially be better than GTA 6, if not comparable when it comes to the Game of the Year discussion. I don't see any other game taking... Because if you don't play Monster Hunter, you don't understand. This is just the beginning. Monster Hunter constantly gets updates, and you just get new stuff thrown in your face all the time. New difficulties, new stuff to grind for. And, you know, I'm sure this game will have an expansion in a year. So, I mean, the future of Monster Hunter games, in my opinion, is always the best part of the game. Because you know the game is only going to get better from here. So, overall, I think the game is great. My personal score would be a 9 out of 10 because those story segments are really distracting. I understand the PC version has problems, so I don't want to ignore that. Although I kind of am, but I do want to acknowledge that. And even the PS5 version is a little bit blurry. But I love the maps, I love the monsters, the gameplay, the sound, everything is great. If the game looked a little higher resolution and it ran good on PC, I think that it would be an easy 10 out of 10. Even with the weird story on rail segments, I would still probably give the game a 10 out of 10. Because it's Monster Hunter, and Monster Hunter is always high quality. And in my opinion, this is the highest quality out of all of the modern Monster Hunter games. So that's just how good it is. You know, tell me how you feel about the game. This review will probably anger you if you're on the PC version, because I know that was in an unacceptable state. And so that is, I am sorry to hear that. If you were excited to play this game and then you have to deal with that, that must suck. But I do want to make that clear that I don't really condone that. I do think that's kind of corny how unoptimized games have become lately. But I would be lying if I said I had to deal with that, because the PS5 version just does not have those problems. So overall, the game is amazing. Let me know how you feel about it. I think that this will be my favorite Monster Hunter game. It kind of already is. I just really like the way it feels. I love everything about it. Yeah, like, subs. Probably gonna have more Monster Hunter content in the future. Yeah, game of the year for me, for sure. So far, game of the year for sure. And I don't think any game is beating that besides potentially GTA 6. So yeah, let me know how you feel. And that was the review. 9 out of 10, Monster Hunter Wilds. Peace.